uh, tuning in with us, or you're going to be getting on pretty soon, or if you're on in the future, it's great to have you. So, what we're talking about today is training and obedience. We're going to go over training and obedience, the frequency at which you should be doing obedience training, the times, like how much time should be dedicated to doing obedience training, and the benefits for behaviors when it comes to doing obedience training. So, there's been a lot in the industry where things have been a lot of convoluted with a lot of information that people put out, and quite frankly, there's some things that are myths and some things that just aren't, and some tried true things that we should be paying attention to. So I have Grim here. I got this picnic table, and this is what I'm going to be using today to demonstrate a lot of the obedience work that we're going to be doing. Okay, and looking at Grim here, up. So, the first things that are important with dealing with obedience training is you do want to reward the dog. There's a lot of argument going on talking about you shouldn't reward your dog, and your dog shouldn't be just given treats and things like that. Now, I don't necessarily agree with giving your dog a processed food like treats. And to tell you the truth, a lot of the things that we feed our dogs probably aren't good. But I'm not a dog nutritionist, so I'm not going to even try to delve into that world, okay? But this is how you would want to go about it, because you don't want your dog relying on treats for doing things, but you also want your dog to understand that when the dog does its job, then good things happen to it. So if the dog waits patiently, then good things come from that. And we want that to be more of an intrinsic thing than an extrinsic thing for him waiting to get something. But it's part of the way that we can be allowed to communicate with the dog and to communicate to the dog. Don't be scared to give your dog things. In fact, I think that it's very healthy for the dog to receive like raw meat and stuff at least a little bit throughout the day or throughout the week, especially chicken, because it can help with cortisone, the same thing that keeps you or collagen, the same thing that is able to keep you healthy and your joints healthy. So giving them that stuff is actually really good for them. So what we're going to do with our puppies, though, is we're going to start off with whatever food that you have. And a lot of people don't do raw training because some people think that it's expensive. It can be. It just depends on all of what you're doing. Um, More expensive than traditional dog food. But what you want to do is you want to give dogs food. Get its kibble, take its kibble, and feed it the kibble while you're training, while you're doing your training. And if you're starting off with a young dog that just doesn't have the concept of sitting and doing those things, you're going to want to do that while luring them with the kibble and then feed them whenever necessary. It's going to do two things. First, it's going to teach the dog to follow you and listen to your instruction and pay attention to what's going on. The second thing that it's going to do is it's going to create a bond with you and your dog. And there also is a hidden effect, and that it's going to prevent the dog from like chewing your fingers off because it's used to eating out of your hand. So it gives it that experience of like slowing down and not biting you. Okay. If the dog bites you, don't be afraid to yelp and let the dog know that it really hurts you, because it'll trigger that let's say what's the word I'm looking for? Empathetic response from the dog, and cause it to say, okay, well, I did hurt you when I bit you. My bad. I won't do it again. So you're going to practice doing that, handing the dog the food and giving it to him, luring him to where you want him to go. Lay, lay, down. Lay, sit. Yeah. It's kind of hard with Grim because he's past that luring stage. So he's like, if I want him to lay, he's like, oh, please. Um, I'm not going to follow your hand around because we haven't done it in a while. But you start to, with your puppy, you kind of want to do that luring until you get them into the position that they're doing it correctly. And when you see that it was a successful position that you put them in, that's when you want to give them the treat. And that's when you want to place the name on the command. Don't be so like upset if the dog doesn't do the command that you told it to do perfectly, though. Like if you told the dog to sit and it laid down, Don't stress out about it too much. That's not really the point of obedience training. The point of obedience training is to ingrain these things into the dog so that when it's time for it to be needed, the dog is able to use it effectively and successfully. It's not really so the dog can sit down perfectly with perfect posture and look up at you the entire time that it's sitting down. That's not really what we're caring about. And quite frankly, it's kind of narcissistic for you to think that you should be the only thing that the dog is ever just thrilled with in its life. The dog's going to be focused on a lot of things, all right? We can try to minimize that amount as much as possible, but you have to face the reality that you're in a world, and to the dog, honestly, the world's more interesting to the dog than it is to, a 30-year-old dude. It's just true. Like, you don't get outside and then want to sniff everything that you walk across. You don't take the time to smell the roses, but dogs definitely do. So don't get upset if your dog gets distracted during training. Just bring them back in by using those type of games and being fun. So after you get that settled in, what you're going to do is you're just going to keep practicing with your dog and practicing that obedience training. So right now he's in a lay position, and I'll tell you this, the dog cares more about the body language than it actually does the commands. The commands that you're speaking verbally aren't the most important thing. So like, let's say you have the dog inside of a lay position. If I say a word, any word at all, the dog is going to follow that command because it's looking at my body language more than it is actually listening to what I'm saying. So if I wanted Grim to get up, which his command for him to sit up would also be hop up, but I'm just going to use a completely different word and I'm going to get him to sit up. It's crazy, right? Blue. Sit. Right. And he just got up. I didn't even use the actual word. I said a color. Green. Because it's not about the words that you use to train your dog. It's more about it's not about the words. It's more about your body language. But those words do come in handy when you're at long distances or when you need to speak to your dog, and you have to take a certain cadence in your tone. So those words do work, but it's more about the body language and the repetition that you've done with your dog over and over again in practice using those obedience commands. Up, up. So we're going to get him back up on this park bench, right? So don't go straight for the treats. Go for your dog's kibble. Make him work for his food. Him eating it outside of your hands, out of the palm of your hands, is going to create a bond between you and your German Shepherd. Focus on those commands that you want him to know using your body language more than you are, speaking to him. That's why they do a lot of the following with the dog. When they start luring the dog with the treats and telling him where to go, because dogs understand our body language better. I mean, it's been like that for millions of years. That's just how they think, right? They watch us. They're very good at analyzing our emotions and understanding what's going on that way. I didn't know what just happened. They sent a message YouTube. I don't know what that is. I ain't even gonna pretend like I know what it is that's going on with YouTube sometimes. All I know is press the record button and do my thing. Thing. So we got Grim up here practicing obedience. We got our food. That's really all that you need. And that's the food work. Don't get caught up in buying a whole bunch of treats and things like that, because what it's going to do is just drain your pockets, because that's what people are looking to do. That's why you go and spend $500 on a board and train trainer that you could have just did yourself. But instead of spending that time that you're supposed to be bonding with the dog, you went and gave your money to some guy to train your dog, and you don't even know what's going on really with the training until he brings you in and says, okay, this is what I want you to do every day. And then you don't follow through with that routine, so you got to keep coming back to the guy. Don't get addicted. Like, we don't want you to get addicted to feeding your dog treats and your dog become basically a gambler in the whole process, right? So, kibble. It's very important. Practice those commands. And the commands that you should be practicing should be practical. Don't waste your time on silly commands. I know some commands can be cute. I know that you want to do these cute commands with your dog. I know that you feel like your dog is your baby and you want to take care of that baby. But stay practical. Stay practical. Treat your dog in a practical manner so that when it comes time for you to be in a practical situation, you can handle the situation with grace and you don't have to worry about certain things. So, what commands should you be teaching your dog? Easy, wait, or stay, hup, get up on top of something and be able to move, sit, and come. That recall. Those are the only ones that you really need to teach your dog. And German Shepherds can learn like hundreds of commands. I forgot the actual number of the amount of commands that they can actually learn, but it is a very high amount. I've seen a dog that knew like 114 separate items at one point. Like they are very intelligent. But those are the 5 that you should focus on, right? So when you focus on those 5 commands, the situations that your dog is going to be in, this is going to take your training a step further, because now they're not just doing those idle commands and they're just doing them for no apparent reason. Now they have a reason to actually be doing these commands. For instance, what is that wait command for, that stay command? Well, imagine there's an older person inside of the kitchen, they're cooking. You want the dog to wait outside the kitchen because it's more than likely that dog might trip, that older person might trip over that giant dog inside of their house and possibly have a fatality. I mean, crash their server in Minecraft, that's what can happen. You know what I'm saying? So you want to make sure that your dog understand these commands and does what it's supposed to, so you could avoid situations like that. You know, dogs tend to be sensitive around things that they don't understand or don't know. So if a dog's seeing a walker for the first time, you want to know that your dog's not going to just go up to that older person and then knock them down. So what we do is we think about the situation that the dog's going to be in. Say you have friends coming over. You don't want your dog to rush to them at the door. We think about that situation and we prepare the dog for that situation. We tell them, sit, stay, or just sit, and then don't break the stay. They should already know, but some dogs don't, and that's not a big deal. Don't let people tell you that, oh, your dog broke the stay, that's a big deal. It's not. The big deal is instilling those obedience commands inside of the dog. So once you tell the dog to stay, you have the people at the door, have them ring the doorbell, and when you see the dog, run over to them, lure the dog back to you, have the dog sit, do it over again, and then practice those repetitions until the dog does it right and reward him along the way. Okay? So, dog sits, he stays like he's doing. I say, good boy. Yes, that's a fine animal. And then I feed him, and then we go back to doing this practice over and over again. Now, how long do you need to do this? This doesn't have to be a super long process, even with a German Shepherd. They say a German Shepherd needs to learn for 1 hour to 2 hours a day. That doesn't have to completely all be obedience training. You don't need to do it that much. You just need 15 minutes out of your day practicing the specific things that you want. And it's better to actually write it down inside of a notebook and then start practicing it out. So 15 minutes a day, I'm thinking about the specific skill that I want him to learn, even as a puppy. So I know that he's going to be a big dog, so I don't want him pulling on the leash. I know that I'm going to have a lot of people coming over, and I know that they're going to be coming over through the back, so I don't want him running to the back door every time he hears the doorbell ring, right? I know that I have older people in my family. I don't want him knocking those older people around, so I'm going to get the equipment that the older people use so that I can practice. That way he doesn't get nervous around those situations and end up jumping up. And then I'm going to practice those obedience commands that go hand in hand with that. The whole specific thing, and I'm going to make this clear and abundant for people to understand, because a lot of people have this idea that their dog, when they're walking beside them, needs to look up at them constantly like there's some sort of God. And it just doesn't make any sense. Your dog needs to be tailored to your household. It doesn't matter what some guy on YouTube says or what somebody says on some podcast or some type of dog trainer. Your dog needs to be tailored to your specific household. If you have small children in your house, your dog needs to know how to be around those children, even to be around the children's toys and not play with their toys and only play with its toys. You have to shape your dog to your household. And that's the truth about it, right? No one that you could take your dog to is going to be as effective as you are. And you're just going to gain more experience as it goes along. Dang, it's starting to rain. It's cool though, because I'm actually a fan of rain. I like it when it rains. Good boy. So now the frequency at which you should train your dog. Well, your dog should be trained depending on its level of energy. So if you have a high energy dog, then you need to be exercising your physical exercises along with your obedience training. And if they're a puppy, I would focus more on the obedience training than the exercise, but I would still keep that exercise going because it's always going to benefit your dog in a very positive way. But as that high energy dog gets older, you want to start incorporating those ideas of physical exercise along with the obedience training. So don't just play fetch, right? Throw the ball, have your dog behind closed doors, and then let the dog out until it track, and then find that ball, right? When it comes back to you, have it sit and then hand you the ball. Things like don't let the dog just drop the ball on the ground and then you have to pick it up. Because the older you get, the less you're going to want to bend over to pick that ball up over and over again. It's going to get quite annoying and it's going to get quite frustrating when the dog doesn't want to give up the ball, right? So throw the ball. When he runs back, play a game of tug, make him sit and make him drop it. Teach him to leave things. You know what I'm saying? Tell him easy to get him to calm down when he's in situations where he's starting to get hyped up, right? But increase the frequency at which he's doing this obedience training. Because not only is that going to exercise your dog physically, but it's going to make the rules more mentally straining for the dog to understand. So he actually has to think about his actions before, he can continue with the game. It's not just we're going to play this game. It's I have to play this game and be thinking about what I'm doing in this game, right? Grim, here, up. Yes, good boy. It's a fine animal. So you want to incorporate those things in there, all right? So the frequency has to be increased so that your dog is tired. And it's not just about making your dog tired. It's about teaching your dog that even though we're having fun, even though things are chaotic in this situation of having fun, you still have to be listening and you still have to be understanding and paying attention to the things that are going on around you. Because let's say you're walking in the park, you don't want your dog to take off after people and you don't want your dog to take off after other animals. Unless you're like me and you let your dog chase ducks, because I just think that it's pretty great for him to chase ducks. It's pretty healthy. He gets to get all that energy out with cardio. But you don't want it to always be that your dog is taking off and running. So how do we do that? A part of that obedience training comes socialization. And if you have great socialization with your dog, what that means is your dog is going to be able to realize the world a lot better, and it's not going to be flipping out every time that it sees something new. For instance, there is a lot of people with this mentality right now. I don't know what it is, but they say, I don't want anybody petting my dog, and I don't want my dog to go up to any other dogs. Well, if your dog doesn't let people touch it, and your dog doesn't go up to other dogs, and your dog never experiences the world, what type of dog are you going to produce? You're going to produce a dog that doesn't like people and it doesn't like other animals. And what happens when a dog doesn't like people or it doesn't like other animals, right? You're going to be in a tough situation. That's the type of dog that ends up biting somebody, or that's the type of dog that ends up biting somebody's kid. And I'm not just speaking out of thin air. I've seen these things happen before. I've seen people own German Shepherds, never take them out past their backyard. And the dog, some kid ends up playing, jumping over a fence and ends up getting bit by the dog, and the dog ends up getting put down, right? Yeah, the kid shouldn't be jumping and going into people's yards, but like the whole situation could have been prevented. One day I came home, cut all my hair off, had a new outfit on, walked into the house. Grim was in the house. When I opened up the door, he almost bit me because he didn't know who I was, right? So we know that dogs have this instinct in them that when things are strange, they tend to bite. And depending on how, unconfident your dog is and how scared your dog is, it might bite even faster. I would say that in the hood, when people keep their dogs in the backyard and those dogs are super mean, odds are they're probably just scared. A lot of the times they don't experience anything, and then how they get them dogs like that sometimes is they just pull on them and mess with them when they're little, and it just aggravates them until they become a very agitated dog, and they put them in that constant state of agitation all the time so they can get them to go to it even faster. I've known because I've seen it before. I've seen them do this to dogs, and I know that's why dogs bite, and that's why dogs are angry. So 9 times out of 10, that's usually the case. How do we prevent that? Well, we prevent that by socializing our dog. So instead of not letting people pet your dog, when you see kids on the street, allow them to go up to your dog and pet the dog. It's really that simple. Have your dog around a lot of people. Take your dog, and my next point, you're going to be like, wow, that's true. Take your dog and then put them in situations where they're with other dogs. The dog park, I'm not really a big fan. You know, you got to be real cautious with that one. But take them there and let them play with other dogs. That way they get that socialization. And never stop doing it, you know? Never stop doing it unless you have to stop doing it. But never stop doing it. Take your dog in those situations so your dog can be socialized, right? And here's my point. This is how you know that socialization works and it creates the best dogs. Because there can be people who are, you know, down on their luck that stand outside of stores with their dogs and ask for change. And I have yet to see somebody that's asking me for change when I'm walking into my local store with an untrained, with a like not behaved dog. Their dogs act completely perfect around people and they ignore people all the time. It's the craziest thing. Do you know why? It's because they're socialized. They've seen people constantly all the time. Cars is passing by them, people is passing by them, other pets is passing by them, and they just sit there and they're well behaved. It's because they're constantly socialized. They're socialized to their environment. They understand what's going on. And, you know, they listen to their handler because they have a great bond. They're with each other constantly. I mean, that's just the truth about it. And I highly doubt that they're going to a dog trainer for it. I don't think if they was asking you for $1, they'd be going to the dog trainer, right? So you have to socialize your dog. That is a huge part of obedience training. And I think people forget that a lot. Even if you have a protection dog that you want to be guarding your house and protecting your house, even if you have that, it's still a good idea to socialize your dog because then your dog can recognize what is a threat and what's not a threat. If you don't do that, then your dog can't have a clear understanding and definition of who is a threat and who's not a threat. Speaking of which, I've seen protection dogs that have like people be wearing the suits and stuff. They'll take the suit off and throw the suit. And guess what the dog does? He goes and attacks the suit that's on the ground. He's not even focused on the guy. I even seen some guy point a gun at a guy, and then the dog didn't even attack the guy who was a threat. Because the dog didn't understand. He couldn't put two and two together to say, oh, he's got that. That's a danger. Because the dog just didn't know. So the dog never attacked the guy. So it was like, you spent $20,000 on this guard dog, but you know, you didn't get too much of your value from it. Grim. So frequency, a big thing. Increase the frequency. If you don't have a high energy dog and you got something like a bulldog where he gets tired just by you walking it across the street and coming home and he has to be put on like a respirator, like you don't have to increase the frequency like that, but it's good to make sure that every dog understands that basic obedience. And when it comes to house training, it's kind of the same thing. But it all boils down to this. You can figure out how to teach obedience. You could have the obedience instilled into the dog. But what's going to matter the most is your system and your structure. You have to have a system to everything you do. That's one of the most important things with potty training a dog is having the system. You have to understand that you need a system and you need a bond with that dog. If you don't have a system, things can fall apart really quick. You could have a well-behaved dog that also tears up your Xbox controller, right? So dogs are very great at learning things. They're not very good at unlearning things. So you want to make sure when you set up your system, everything is in place for your dog to be successful. We want to set the dog up for success. We don't want to set the dog up for failure. So what you need to do is understand your positive reinforcement. You also have to understand your negative reinforcement. Now, I'm not telling you to go get a shot collar and put it on your dog and electrocute your dog every time that he does something that he's not supposed to, because that could get out of hand really quickly. But I'm telling you that you have to have some sort of system that works for you and that works for your household, because you're going to tailor your pet to the way that you live. If you're the type of person that goes out hiking, you need to be putting your dog into situations that is going to involve that, right? So that way your dog can be successful at the things that you want it to do when you want it to happen, right? If you wanted to wait while you walk across a river, you're gonna have to tell your dog to wait. And if you needed to come very quickly across that river, your recall has to be strong. So you have to practice those things into your system. You gotta understand what you're getting the dog for, right? The foundation of your obedience is, what did you get this dog for? And a lot of people don't think about that. When they're going to get a dog, they're not thinking about what they're getting the dog for. Are you getting the dog to protect your house? Are you getting your dog to go on adventures with you? And some people spend thousands of dollars on dogs. I'm not going to say that I haven't spent thousands of dollars on dogs, because I definitely have. But like, write that information down, so that you have it. So you understand what you actually purchased this animal for. And then once you understand that, it'll be easier to set up your obedience training and be easier to set up that foundation of understanding. And so that you and the dog have a complete understanding of each other. So I'm gonna start answering any questions that you have inside of the chat. Go ahead, drop your thinking down below. If there's any questions that you have for me, anything at all, I'm open to any type of responses. I'm also open to criticism. Whatever that you have, go ahead and drop it below in the chat, and I'll try to see it. YouTube's being kind of weird. For some reason, it won't let me see the chat. Now that I'm looking at it, it says, it's telling me, welcome to live. Remember to guard your privacy, abide by our community guidelines. I don't know what that means. Anybody has a clue what that means, you can go ahead and tell me. I'm gonna try and see what I can do to bring this chat up. Maybe I have to click the learn more. Nope, it still ain't taking off. Man, what is going on? I can't even see from you guys if the chat's actually working. Yeah, it won't even let me see anybody's chat. It has a chat filter, but it doesn't even show. It's not even showing up with the actual chat. Let me see this. Let me see if it will work. Hold on. Nope, that's still there. I have no idea. I don't know what's going on with YouTube right now. Grim, here. So, I wish this chat will pop up so I could take any questions or anything, but YouTube's being completely strange right now. It's not letting me see any messages. It just has this black box where the chat box usually is, and it says, welcome to live chat. It says follow guidelines. I don't know what's going on. And you guys can't even tell me. Let me see. I'm gonna try one more thing and see if this works. Nope, did nothing. That's crazy. It's absolutely insane. There's a chat. It says chat filter. I don't want to hide any. When I click show the chat, it doesn't allow me to see the chat. Yeah. Sometimes YouTube acts funny. But yeah, this has been from the Prairie Shepherd with Grim. We talked about obedience training, the type of commands we should use, how do we implement the training. We talked about the frequency of the training. Now, the last thing that we have to talk about is the importance of the training, why it's important. Well, you have a puppy, right? Hold on. Grim, here. You have a puppy, and your puppy is going to go into obedience. It's going to go into adolescence, right? And if you have a dog that goes from puppyhood into adolescence, it doesn't have a bond with you, and it's never gone through obedience training, it's going to tear up your Xbox controller. You could kiss your Xbox controller goodbye, and you could kiss your wife's shoes goodbye, because he's going to tear up every last pair of her high heels that she has. So you could probably kiss your wife goodbye. Either that or you're going to get rid of your dog. So you need to train your dog to have great obedience. You have that foundation, it's going to work out for you in the long run. If you don't have that foundation of obedience, you might turn into one of those people that want a quick fix when it comes to fixing your dog. And trust me, it never works. Going to the trainer, it rarely works. You have to keep up with that training. You have to constantly teach your dog. Remember, they're better at learning things than they are at unlearning things. So setting them up for success is the best thing that you could do. If you bought your dog from the shelter and you don't know its underlying behaviors, it's going to be a difficult situation. It's going to be hard for you to be able to keep up with that type of dog that has so many unknowns and so many anomalies, right? Left and right. Things pop up constantly. So it's best to start off from a puppy, build a great foundation, a solid foundation when it comes to your obedience training, and constantly build that dog up and setting it up for success so that it can continue to grow and be the dog that you want it to be. Because once it gets into adolescence, your dog is going to become rebellious and it's going to want to test you all the time. And it's going to want to see what it can do and what it can't do, what is possible and what isn't possible. You know, once kids get to a certain age, they think, okay, you're not a superhero. You can't do everything. They know that. So it's not too far-fetched to assume that a dog knows that too, you know? So they constantly do things in adolescence. They become rebellious. You want to have that good foundation to where they feel solid. You know what I'm saying? Like solid to the point that they're like, I can go off and do things without my owner being around and not get myself into trouble. My dog can stay in the backyard and not dig a gigantic hole because he's bored, right? You want to know that your dog can be successful in those things, and it just takes practice. So this is the Prairie Shepherd. This is Grim. He's chilling right here. And we're out. Peace.